How old farmers always pick the sweetest watermelon, a forgotten farmstead trick. But I want you to know something before we go any further. The real secret isn't what most people think it is. Everyone talks about the sound. Everyone talks about the weight, and yes, those matter. But there's one signal that farmers use that almost nobody remembers now, and it changes everything about how you pick a melon. Not just whether it's sweet, but whether you should even bring it home at all. Stay with me, because at the end of this video, I'm going to show you which test actually separates the ripe from the ruined. And it's not the one you've heard about. If you've ever grown watermelons in your own garden or bought them at a farmer's market, I'd love to know in the comments, what's your method right now? Do you tap them? Do you go by weight? I want to hear what works for you, because honestly, most of us are just guessing out there. Hold on, this part is crucial. There's a whole guide that walks through every single signal a farmer's wife would have used, the complete pattern recognition system that took generations to build. It's in the description and the pinned comment if you want to go deeper into the actual mechanisms. That's the place for all the signals and the reasoning behind each one. For right now, though, let me walk you through what actually matters when you're standing in front of a pile of melons with your wallet open. Most people think the field spot is just cosmetic. It's not. The field spot is where the melon touched the ground while it grew. That patch never saw sun, never felt wind. For weeks, sometimes months, it sat there in contact with warm earth. And that contact, that slow heat over time, tells you exactly when the melon came off the vine. A deep, buttery yellow field spot, the color of heavy cream or fresh butter, that means the melon ripened completely. The ground heated that spot gradually, week after week, until it turned from pale green to pure gold. That's your signal. That's what the old farmers looked for first, before they even picked the melon up. A white or barely colored spot means it came off too early. The earth never had time to work that yellowing magic. The flesh inside will be pale, almost translucent in some spots. Watery, no sugar, no taste. Those melons go straight back. Now the second thing almost everyone skips, and this is where it gets strange, is the tendril. On the vine, watermelons grow with a little curling tendril right near where the stem connects. When you pick a melon at exactly the right time, that tendril dries out completely. It turns papery and brown. When you're at the market or the stand, you can see if that tendril is still attached and what color it is. A brown, papery, completely dried tendril, that's ripe. Pick it. A green tendril, or one that's still moist-looking and flexible. That melon was harvested at least 3 to 5 days before it was fully ready. The farmer picked it too early, probably because of weather coming in or because they were clearing the field. The melon itself might have continued ripening a little off the vine. Ripening doesn't completely stop, but it'll never be as sweet as one that stayed put. The third test the old farmers used was something they called the give. You don't squeeze the whole melon like you're testing a cantaloupe. That's actually a mistake most people make. Instead, you hold the melon gently in both hands and you press your thumbs into the area right below the stem on top of the melon. Just a light pressure, not hard. A perfectly ripe melon will have a tiny amount of give there, maybe a 1/4 inch, maybe a hair less. Not mushy, not hard as a rock. A slight yielding like the skin is full and taut but not paper thin. If you press and it's absolutely solid, like you're touching a bowling ball, the melon might be technically ripe, but it could be overripe. A melon that's been sitting on the ground too long or in storage develops a thick, tough rind and the flesh inside starts to separate from the skin. It'll taste grainy, mushy in a bad way. If it gives too much, if your thumbs sink in easily, don't even bother carrying it to the register. That melon is already breaking down inside. The cellular structure is collapsing. You'll cut into it and find soft spots, maybe even some fermentation starting. The give test only takes 2 seconds, but it tells you whether the melon is in that golden window, ripe but not past it. This is the part that still bothers me, frankly, because so many people get this wrong. They've learned that tapping is the key test. Your father probably tapped melons. Mine did too. And I can remember him holding one to his ear, listening for some magical hollow sound that meant sugar. But here's what actually happens when you tap a melon. The ripeness does affect the sound, but only because a ripe melon is denser and has different water content inside. A riper melon produces a deeper, slightly hollower thump. But the problem is that 3 out of 4 people in any grocery store will hear almost the same sound from a half-ripe melon and a perfect one. The differences are subtle. Your ear has to be trained. And honestly, most grocery store melons are picked so inconsistently that the thump test becomes almost useless as a primary signal. The old farmers didn't rely on it as their first check. It was one tool in a larger system. They'd already passed the melon through the field spot test, the tendril test, and the give test. By then, the thump was just confirming what they already knew. The weight test comes next, and this one is deceptively simple. Pick up 2 melons that look roughly the same size, one in each hand. A ripe watermelon is packed with water and sugar. It is dense, heavy for its dimensions. The unripe one, or the one that was picked early, feels light and hollow by comparison. Your hands will know the difference immediately. You do not need a scale. You do not need mathematics. Just hold them both. Feel the density. Most people skip this test because it seems too obvious, but that is exactly why it works. A melon that has ripened fully on the vine accumulates sugars and water throughout its flesh. The weight reflects that. An early picked melon sits in a truck for days. It loses moisture. It becomes light, hollow inside. You can feel that hollow emptiness the moment you lift it. The shape test is the one that surprises people most. Walk past a pile of melons and you will see round ones, oblong ones, and ones that are slightly flattened on one end. The old farmers had a preference, and it was not about beauty. A watermelon that is slightly flattened on the bottom, with broader shoulders at the top, spent more time on the vine. That flat spot indicates the melon settled deeper into the earth, rested longer, ripened more thoroughly. The perfectly round ones often came off the vine early. They were picked when they were still developing their final shape. The melon that looks almost asymmetrical, slightly squared off at one end, that is the one that had time to mature. It sounds backwards, but the shape tells the story of how long it stayed in the field. Now we move to the webbing. Run your fingers over the skin of the melon. You will feel a fine pattern of lines, almost like a net or lacing across the surface. That is called webbing. The more pronounced it is, the more times the melon cracked slightly as it grew and then healed over. Each crack and healing cycle added another line to that network. A melon with heavy, pronounced webbing spent a long season in the field. It experienced temperature changes, water cycles, stress, and recovery. All of that creates the pattern. A smooth melon with barely any webbing was off the vine before those growth cycles accumulated. The webbing is the fingerprint of time, the signature of a melon that had room to mature fully. Before we continue, I need to circle back to something important. The way these tests work together is the real secret. Most people think they are picking a watermelon. What they are actually doing is reading the history of that melon. Every mark, every spot, every line tells you when it was picked and how long it sat on the vine. The field spot tells you about ripeness and sunshine exposure. The tendril tells you about the harvest window. The give tells you about internal structure. The weight tells you about density and sugar content. The shape tells you about maturation time. The webbing tells you about seasonal stress and healing. If you want to understand the complete system, the way old farmers developed these observations over generations, the science behind why each test works, and how to combine them into a reliable method every single time you shop, my guide covers all of it in depth. You will find it in the description and in the pinned comment. It goes far deeper into the mechanisms behind each signal, the history of how farmers documented these methods, and the regional variations in melon selection depending on climate and variety. That guide is where the complete framework lives. This video gives you the tests. The guide gives you the why and the how of mastering them. Esther's mother used to say that picking a watermelon was not luck, it was literacy. Learning to read what the melon was telling you. And once you learned that language, you never brought home a bad one again. She would walk into a stand with her eyes closed and walk out with the sweetest melon every time. Not because she was guessing, because she was reading. The tendril test is one more that most people have never heard of. At the point where the melon connects to the vine, there are small curled stems called tendrils. If the melon is ripe and ready for harvest, that tendril is dry, brittle, and brown. It has completed its job. But if the melon was picked early, that tendril is still green and flexible. It is still alive, still drawing nutrients. The moment a melon truly ripens, the plant knows it. The vine stops sending resources to that melon. The tendrils brown and dry out. This is one of the most reliable signals on the entire melon, and almost no one checks for it because they do not know it exists. Look for the brown dried tendril curled near where the melon met the vine. That brown tendril tells you the vine itself decided the melon was done. The plant abandoned it, moved on. When you see that, you are holding a melon that ripened fully on the ground under the sun with time to develop real sugar. That is the melon you want in your cart. Now, the give test. This one requires nothing but your hands and a little patience to understand what you are feeling for. Cup the melon in both palms like you are holding a basketball. Press gently with your thumbs. Not hard. Gentle pressure, the way you would test an avocado or a peach. A watermelon that is truly ripe will give just slightly under that pressure. Not mushy, not hard as concrete. There is a small amount of flex in the skin, a subtle softness that tells you the inside is mature and full of water and sugar. An underripe melon feels hard all over, like a green basketball. An overripe melon, one that sat too long or was stored badly, will feel soft and almost spongy. That melon is already beginning to rot inside. The give is small, delicate. You have to train your fingers to feel the difference, and that takes maybe 3 melons before your hands understand what they are sensing. After that, you will know without thinking. The weight test comes next. Lift your melon. A ripe watermelon is shockingly heavy for its size. This is because it is full of water. A small watermelon, maybe 8 or 9 pounds, should feel dense and substantial in your arms. An underripe melon of the same size will feel noticeably lighter. It is still mostly air and pale flesh. Ripe melons are packed tight with liquid and sugar. They weigh more. You can feel the difference immediately once you know to expect it. This is why the old farmers never chose melons by size alone. A light melon looks big but disappoints. A heavy melon, even a medium one, is usually worth taking home. Before we continue, I need you to keep something in mind. These tests are connected. None of them works alone. The field spot tells you ripeness. The tendril confirms it. The give shows you the texture inside. The weight proves it is full of juice and not hollow. When you stack these signals on top of each other, you are not guessing anymore. You are reading the melon like a book. And when you want to understand the deeper patterns behind why these signals work, why the field spot changes color the way it does, what causes the vine to stop feeding the melon at exactly the right moment, the full guide I created goes into all of that. You can find it in the description or pinned at the top of the comments. It covers not just how to pick melons, but how to grow them in your own garden, when to harvest them, how to store them to keep them sweet through the season. The guide has the complete framework. The shape test is simpler than most people think. You are not looking for a perfect sphere. In fact, the old farmers avoided those. They looked for melons that were slightly asymmetrical, a little flattened on one or both ends. A melon that grew freely on the vine, shifting position, settled into a natural shape rather than being forced into a mold. Those slightly irregular melons tend to be sweeter. A perfectly round melon, one that looks like it came from a factory, was often grown in a controlled way, maybe even in a mold or wrapped in something while it ripened. Those melons can taste thin and watery. Look for the slightly flat, slightly irregular shape. It tells you the melon grew wild and took its time. The webbing test is the last one, and it is both simple and striking once you see it. Turn your melon over again. Look at the surface. You are searching for lines, a fine network of tan or brown markings that look almost like cracks or a spider web across the skin. These lines are called russeting. They form when a melon has lived through stress during its growing season. Heat stress, uneven water, variations in sun and temperature. The plant responded to that stress by thickening and darkening the skin. Those lines are not a flaw. They are a sign of complexity, of a melon that had to work for its ripeness. Melons with heavy webbing, that tan network you can see clearly, are almost always sweeter and more complex in flavor than smooth-skinned melons. This is counterintuitive. Most people think cracks and lines mean damage. They actually mean depth. You have now seen all 7 tests. The field spot, the tendril, the give, the weight, the shape, the webbing. In roughly 90 seconds, you can perform all of them on any melon in any bin. Once you have done this 3 or 4 times, your hands and eyes will do it automatically. You will stand in front of a pile of melons and you will simply know. The sweetest one will call to you because your brain will have learned to read the signals. Before we continue, I need to pull you back for a moment. Because here is what separates people who bring home a melon that tastes like cardboard from people who walk away with the sweetest one in the bin. It is not luck and it is not guesswork. It is pattern recognition. Your eyes and hands are learning a language that farmers' wives spoke fluently for over a century. The melon is telling you its story through color, through texture, through weight. You are just learning to listen. If you want to understand not just how to read these signals, but why watermelons express ripeness through these specific markers, I have built a complete guide in the description. It walks through the biology of melon ripening, the soil conditions that affect sweetness, and how to extend your harvest season using old propagation methods. The guide goes much deeper than I can here. It is there if you want it. Now, here is something most gardeners never consider. If you are growing your own melons, the field spot tells you exactly when to harvest from your vines. You do not need a calendar. You do not need to guess. Walk out to your patch in late July or early August, look at the underside of each melon where it touches the soil, and check that spot. When it shifts from white to pale yellow, you have days left. When it turns that deep, creamy butter color, that melon is ready. Cut it from the vine that same day or the next morning. The flavor peaks in that window and then slowly declines. Most gardeners wait too long because they want the melon to look bigger. They are leaving sweetness in the field. The tendril test works equally well in your own patch. On the vine, tendril drying happens predictably. You can mark your calendar. When a melon sends out its flower, watch the tendril closest to that fruit. When it turns completely brown and curls tight, you have another week or 10 days. That melon is still hardening, still concentrating sugar. In 7 to 10 days, check the field spot. This method lets you time your harvest so 3 or 4 melons ripen within days of each other instead of scattered across weeks. Your family gets to enjoy them at peak ripeness all at once, and you avoid the waste of picking one melon too early and another too late. The give, the weight, the shape. All of these shift as the melon ripens on your own soil. If you are growing melons, you already have the advantage. You can feel these changes week to week. You can take photographs of the field spot's color progression. You can build an intuition that store shoppers never develop because you are watching the ripeness unfold in real time. This is why old farmers' families ate the sweetest melons. They grew them, they knew the vines, they harvested at the exact moment flavor peaked. But there is something else worth mentioning. The webbing, the lines on the skin, they tell you something about the season itself. A melon with light webbing grew in a cool summer. A melon with heavy webbing grew in a hot one. Heavy webbing correlates with more concentrated sugars because the melon had to work harder to develop its skin. In a home garden, you cannot control temperature, but you can use this knowledge when buying melons at a farmer's market. Ask the grower about the summer. If it was hot and dry, look for heavy webbing. If it was cool and wet, the sweetness might be more delicate but still present. The webbing will tell you what kind of season those melons experienced. This is where the old methods show their real value. They were not designed to work only in one situation or one season. They adapt. A farmer's wife in 1947 did not have access to the same melon varieties we have now. She did not have refrigeration the way we do. Yet she could walk up to any bin, perform these 7 tests, and know. Her hands had learned the language. That learning took time. 4 or 5 shopping trips, maybe a dozen trips, but once learned, it never left. She could teach it to her daughter, the daughter could teach it to hers. This knowledge passed down not because it was written in books, it passed because it worked every single time. The deepest part of this knowledge is understanding that you are not searching for perfection, you are reading readiness. A melon with a deep yellow field spot is not perfect. It might be slightly oval when you prefer round. Its webbing might be light or heavy, but it will be ripe. It will be sweet. That is all that matters. In your own garden, apply this same principle to your entire harvest. A tomato that is not the size you expected but has the deep color and slight give you are looking for will taste better than a larger tomato picked too early. A pepper that seems small but has the weight and color of ripeness will have more flavor than a green one waiting for size. Reading ripeness supersedes all other measures. This is the philosophy that fed American families well for generations. Now, this is the secret I promised you at the beginning. The old farmers did not pick watermelons by luck or by intuition or by some mystical sense passed down through bloodlines. They pick them by reading 7 small concrete signals that any person can learn and recognize in under 2 minutes. The field spot, the tendril, the give, the thump, the weight, the shape, the webbing. These 7 tests are not mysterious. They are not difficult. They are simply what happens when a watermelon sits on the ground and ripens properly in the sun. Every signal tells you one thing: this melon stayed on the vine long enough. That is all you need to know. And once you know it, you will never again stand in a grocery store or at a farm stand feeling uncertain about whether you are bringing home something worth eating. The reason most people fail at picking watermelons is not that they lack some secret talent. It is that they never learned to look. They never learned what ripe actually looks and feels like. So they guess. They pick the biggest one or the darkest one or whichever one feels heavy. And half the time they lose money and waste food. The farmers' wives did not guess. They walked to the pile with a system. They used their hands and their eyes and their ears in a specific sequence, and they left with sweetness every single time. Your own garden teaches you this faster than any store ever will. When you grow watermelons yourself, you learn the exact moment they ripen on the vine. You see the field spot turn from white to pale yellow to golden yellow. You feel the tendrils shift from green to brown. You watch the shape settle. You listen to the vine. And then, when you pick that melon and cut it open, you taste the result of reading those signals correctly. That taste becomes your reference point. After that, picking a good watermelon anywhere becomes automatic. Even if you never grow watermelons, the principle extends to everything in your garden and at every market you visit. Tomatoes, peppers, squash, beans, corn. Every single crop signals its ripeness through color, weight, texture, and how it yields to pressure. The old methods work because they are based on what actually happens when plants mature. There is no shortcut to this knowledge except paying attention. And the more you grow your own food, the faster your eyes and hands learn to read those signals. Start with one test this week. Just one. Walk to a farm stand or a grocery store, and before you pick up a single melon, examine the field spot on 5 different ones. Compare them side by side. Notice the difference between a pale, almost white spot and a deep golden one. Feel how that one difference in color reflects a week or more of additional ripening time on the vine. That single observation will change how you shop forever. When you bring home a melon with a golden field spot, a brown tendril, a slight give, a hollow thump, proper weight, balanced shape, and distinct webbing, you will bite into sweetness. Your family will taste the difference. And you will understand why the old farmers never wasted money on disappointment. They had a system. Now you have one too. The best part is that this knowledge costs nothing. It requires no special tools, no equipment, no subscription to anything. Just your eyes, your hands, and 2 minutes of attention. The old families mastered this before supermarkets existed, before trucks brought melons from 1,000 miles away, before anyone could afford to be careless about food. They had to be good at this because they depended on it. You can be just as good starting today. If you found this useful, please subscribe to this channel and ring that notification bell so you never miss a new video. Leave a comment below and tell me about the best watermelon you have ever eaten, or the worst one you have brought home. I read every single one. The full guide to reading ripeness across your entire garden, with charts, photographs, and field notes from 3 generations of farmers, is in the description and pinned in the comments. That is where the deeper patterns are explained. Thank you for watching. I will see you on the next one.